Chapter 11. The Savior Prince. I am drunk as hell, and my heart is swooning. What can I say? I'm in a magical season in my life. I'm in love. Yes, in love with Will Smith. I have to be honest. Me falling for Will Smith was very unexpected for me. From afar, and even after meeting him a couple of times in the Hollywood world, I concluded that Will Smith would never have been on my radar, only because he was so cheerful. That was a sticking point. Cheerful didn't represent itself as deep, and my young mind believed a troubled person was a deep person. To my surprise, Will proved to be one of the most complex individuals I'd ever meet. We had more in common than I could have imagined, but it was his irresistible charm that stole my heart, and in time, that of the world. And here we are, after 8 months of his unstoppable charm offensive on Thanksgiving Day in Jamaica, a small island nation, and that is the latest stop on our North America Young Love Gone Wild tour. Everything has been a blur, from our first jaunt that began, "Where are we going?" "You'll see, pack a bag." "Oh, a private jet." This was before everybody in Hollywood had to have their own private airplane on standby for spur-of-the-moment weekends in paradise. With the heat of rum punch starting to surge through my veins, I'm thinking back to how Will managed to wear down my defenses early in our courtship. Gotta say, his level of intelligence, mixed with his West Philly grit, was compelling. We each understood where the other came from, and there was no need to offer explanations. He also had a unique way of presenting an argument. On our very first date, we were sitting at a restaurant having a fierce debate over dinner. Will pointed to his glass as a visual component to understanding perception. "You see that glass? It's to the right from where you're sitting." He waited for me to agree, and I did. But from where I'm sitting, it's on my left. I had never thought about things that way at the tender age of 23. The point he was conveying was that learning to understand someone else's perception by putting yourself in their position is a powerful skill. Nobody around me at that time was thinking that deeply. I admit, it felt great to be courted by the most skilled man at courtship on the planet. But the greater magnet for me was my sense that Will would challenge me in substantial ways. He was never hesitant to take on the status quos in Hollywood set up for black men, and women of color as well. He broke the rules that were entrenched by Hollywood's ignorance of the broad reach of black talent. He broke rules so effortlessly, it would set him in a league of his own. And you know what I found to be so gangster about that? He did it with a smile. I respected that. A lot. I also respected that he could make me laugh like no other. He could sometimes, only sometimes, be hilariously silly. I did not find him as consistently funny as others. But when he did make me laugh, he knew it was genuine and made a sport out of having me literally, and I mean literally, rolling on the floor. Will was a guy who could be comfortable in the hood or at the White House and everywhere in between. He had the ability to spread his arms wide and promise you that the world was his oyster, and he was going to give you all the pearls it had to offer. Although I had never encountered anyone like him, that was a fact. I had no idea that he would sweep me off my feet so quickly. Will courted everyone in my world, too. My mother, my friends, my co-workers, you name it. Will and Maxine, my roommate then, became instant friends. Everybody took to Will. Who wouldn't? It never occurred to me to question how fast we moved into our whirlwind, because that was just how my whole life had been. Everything moved at lightning speed. His life moved the same way. With that pace, at this point, we were primed for each other. In bits and pieces, Will and I told each other our respective stories of growing up in chaos and dysfunction. In hindsight, It's clear that we were each running from ourselves and our thorny pasts, too busy adapting to the demands of wanting it all and trying to have it all, but in different ways for different reasons. At the start of our relationship, I sat him down to explain the breakdown I had gone through and that I'd been taking Prozac. That same day, I stopped taking it. In the euphoria of this storybook romance, I felt, who needs Prozac? I don't know how he felt about my admitting what I'd come through. He just smiled and said, okay, and kept it moving. In hindsight, it's obvious we were showing each other red flags. He was freshly separated and running from having to face how and why his marriage had dissolved. And I was about to make him my new Prozac while running from the reality that I had been diagnosed as clinically depressed. But who cared? We were young, and the whirlwind between us was too intoxicating at the time to pay the red flags any mind. After having avoided alcohol all this time, I started drinking again socially because Will and I loved to drink together. Will was a lightweight, which I found hilarious considering how big he is. He'd be lucky to finish one small drink of some kind before he knocked out. Me, on the other hand, I didn't have that issue. Being pursued with all the bells and whistles, as Will knew how to do, was the main drug, with a drink or two or three or four as the chaser. The gifts and surprises had to keep topping themselves. I'd arrive at my trailer on the set of Nutty Professor and see Fawn shaking her head with a smile, only to open the door and be met with dozens and dozens of roses that Will had sent, so profuse that I couldn't even get in the door. There was jewelry and later cars, but from the start, mostly luxury weekends where I'd be whisked away to a private airport and then flown off to Cabo to stay at a private estate. On other occasions, I'd open my front door to find a basket of books he bought for me and had delivered to my doorstep as a surprise, connecting to some ideas we may have been digging on together with a thoughtful note inside. The one thing that did not work for Will was staying over at my place, mainly because it was haunted. To me, there was nothing foreboding about the spirits there, but Will, like my friends, was creeped out. He didn't mind visiting me during the day, but he stayed the night only once. Will would eventually ask me to move in with him, and his house became where I spent most of my time. By that point, I was all in, and Will kept upping the ante, like this trip to Jamaica that included Dwayne and Tisha. And so off we flew in a private plane to Baltimore to see my people, and then we drove to Philly to see Will's people, then off to New York on the jet so Will could do David Letterman and Dwayne could see his people. From there we jumped back on the jet to go to Jamaica. Amid all that magic, because the world was now our proverbial oyster, we would wind up flying next to Aspen, where the winter wonderland awaited. In advance of our arrival in Jamaica, Will had rented a beautiful brick house with a pool and a mainland feel, not the typical Caribbean home. The grounds were full of lush tropical greenery, one of my favorite characteristics of the island. I've always had an affinity for Jamaica's nature, especially the jungle-like rainforests. And this was, after all, the land of my grandmother's roots. Here we are, Thanksgiving Day, finishing up a delicious Caribbean feast prepared by a local chef. For dessert, I decide to stick with rum punch, my absolute favorite. Soon, we all retire to the living room, which looks out to the pool, all lit up and sparkling. Everyone is mellow. Not me. I've had way too much to drink already, and I'm a little belligerent. This was a complicated time for Will, as well as for me. He was in the middle of his divorce from Cherie, and I didn't know a damn thing about the complexities of divorce, other than what I'd observed in my dysfunctional upbringing. My biggest misunderstanding about the dissolution of marriage was the belief that divorce and a breakup were the same. I figured once you decided to send divorce papers, that meant you were truly done. Cherie had been the one who filed for divorce, which made me believe it would be a clean break. Divorce doesn't work like that, especially when there is a child involved. No, ma'am. A few months after I'd really fallen for Will, he had called to announce that Cherie wanted to put the divorce aside and try to reconcile. My heart crashed. Hot tears spilled from my eyes, but my voice on the phone held steady. It occurred to me that this wasn't about me or even us. This was really about Will and Cherie's 2-year-old son, Trey. In a flash, I saw Trey's circumstance, and it made me think of all the times in my childhood when I badly wished adults had thought of me first. I wanted to do better by Trey than what I felt had been done by me. As calmly as I could, I said, "You have to try. There's a child involved." I thought I would collapse. In my mind, I was letting go of the best thing that had happened to me in a long time. But I knew without a doubt it was for the better. 2 terrible weeks passed, at which point Cherie and Will both decided to continue with their divorce. Now, months later, in my drunken agitation in the living room of the rented house in Jamaica, it grates at me that I'm hearing Will on a phone call with Cherie and family, laughing and wishing everyone Happy Thanksgiving. Here we go again. My insecurity spikes. From his end, and how he was just geeing away, to my insecure mind, it sounds like a reconciliation love fest. So, as Will is finishing up his call with Cherie's mother, Pat, whom I will grow to adore, and saying his goodbyes to everyone, I yell, "If you divorce, what the hell you need to talk to Cherie's mother for?" Will shoots a cold look my way. Seconds later, he hangs up the phone. "What was all that?" I growl. The petty arrogance in my tone instantly takes Will over. His face twists in disbelief that I'm even going there. "What do you mean? Why am I talking to her? It's Thanksgiving, and she's my son's grandmother." Before I have a chance to say anything else, I watch as Will gets up from the chair in the living room and makes his way to a lounge chair outside by the pool. It's a beautiful hot night, and the lights from the pool reflect ripples of iridescent light across his face. With too much drink in me, I decide to press my luck and follow Will outside. "What? You don't want to talk to me now?" I bark. Then I look at him sheepishly like, "Come on." Will shoots me another chilly look with that stern, "I'm not playing with you" expression I'm going to learn all too well not to push. "You're drunk and you're talking crazy." He leans back in the lounge chair. Something tells me I should leave it alone, but I don't. "All I was asking," Will shuts me down, "I'm not talking to you about this. I actually don't want to talk to you at all." He spits his words with finality, lies back in the chair, and closes his eyes. The tone of his voice and the frosty glare he gave me have made it very clear that he's doing all he can to restrain how angry he is. Furthermore, by now, rum punch be damned, I realize I've been out of line. This was me trying to play tough, but the truth of the matter is, I'm scared he's going to call everything off and leave me again. Now in shame and self-recrimination, I can't believe how much I showed my ass, in full disrespect of Will trying to keep things peaceful and smooth in an already difficult situation, because I was in my feelings. Will was doing his best to manage it all, and I wasn't being helpful. My immaturity made me completely blind to the fact that Cherie, Trey, and her family were feeling a great loss as well. The bottom line is, I acted ugly, and I know it. Not to mention, as I pace around the pool berating myself that my childish reaction has ruined the whole seduction of the night, I was ready for a full-on sexy evening if you get my drift. How in the hell, I'm thinking, can I get things back to hot and sexy? As I look at the lights reflecting off the water in the pool and then back up to the roof of this house where we're staying, my drunk ass devises a plan. Crazy as it is, when I go check the side of the brick house, I see that the black ironwork of the trellis is perfectly structured to serve as a ladder. Without hesitation, I put down my red cup full of rum punch, kick off my sandals, and start to climb the railing. Thank goodness it's dirty, which gives me the confidence to place my feet in those tiny wedges in order to hoist myself to the next rung. With each step, I start to feel more and more like Catwoman in my tight-fitting, hiked-up lycra dress as I scale the side of the house. Finally, I reach the roof, where, conveniently, there's a small black iron fencing around Dwayne's bedroom window. Hanging from my newfound iron ladder, I yell in a drunk, sloppy whisper, "Dwayne!" After a few moments, Dwayne pulls his curtain back to see me hanging from the side of the trellis. He then opens the window, pokes his head out, and bursts into laughter. Shh! I can barely get my fingers across my lips to signal Dwayne to be quiet. "Jada, what are you doing?" he asks with amused concern. "Shh! Quiet! I don't want him to hear me," I say in a slurry stage whisper. "Oh, well," Dwayne whispers too, chuckling away. "Yes, he's mad at me. I'm gonna jump off the roof into the pool. Shh! Don't say nothing." A mix of serious determination and fierce concentration gives me 2 seconds of sober confidence. Enough to pull myself onto the roof to the left of Dee's window. Laughing, Dwayne blurts out, "Jada, no!" He knows this is dangerous and knows damn well he should get me off the roof. But the boy in him has to watch it play out. Here's the thing. Once I commit, rethinking an entirely flawed plan is not my style. So now, on the rooftop, I do my best to pull myself together and get as coherent as possible. Slowly, I make my way to the edge of the roof, about 20 feet in the air. It's a lot higher than I guessed, and the edge of the pool is a little farther from the house than what I calculated from below. Through my drunk mind's eye, the path forward tells me I'll have to run and then jump out toward the pool so I don't miss it entirely and break my back on the concrete. Inhaling a deep breath, I turn toward the house and walk farther up the rooftop to get a good running start. Within a second, I whip around and start to run toward the edge of the roof. In no time, I am flying in the air screaming, "I love you, Will!" Splash! My body slammed into the water. Thank goodness it was the deep end because I damn near slammed into the floor of the pool. The water was freezing and dulled my drunken high. When my head popped out of the water, I was ecstatic. That quest was a hell of a thrill, and I was completely without injury. Quickly, I swam to the side and lifted myself out of the water. Will was sitting in the same lounge chair I had left him in as I shuffled toward him, soaked and shivering, my teeth chattering at top volume as I continued to profess my love for him. "I love you, Will. I love you, Will." By now, Dwayne had run down to the pool and witnessed up close my whole drowned rat perk walk. While I shuffled closer to Will, I could see him smiling from ear to ear. My plan worked. He got up and wrapped me in a towel that was on the back of his chair and pulled me into his lap. "You are crazy as hell, you know that?" Then he kissed me and held me in his arms so I could get warm. This was us. And this night was a preview of the next damn near 3 decades of our life together, living on edges of our own making and driving each other absolutely crazy, sometimes joyfully and other times with great dislike. We must be about the business of saving ourselves and calling attention to all that is keeping us from being whole. Bell Hooks, Sisters of the Yam. My experience is that if someone is willing to save you, Most likely, it's because they are looking to be saved too. How many of us bought into the fairy tale that the prince in shining armor or the beautiful princess would save us from ourselves and the horrors of life? Me. We all buy into fairy tales to a certain degree because of centuries of being fed the messaging of what romantic love promises us. Permission to avoid self-responsibility by allowing someone to protect you while demonstrating how much they love you endlessly. Because if they really love you, they will know how to and be willing to rescue you from all the pain of life. What's crazy is that the beginning of most relationships feels so good that this false idea is validated as attainable. New relationships can be so intoxicating that we forego the need to take care of ourselves and often abandon the healing work or our own growth on our journey to become more whole. In turn, we continue to expect the Savior to provide the intoxication, the euphoria of saving us, so that we don't have to feel the weight of the baggage we brought into the relationship. We don't want to have to deal with our shit. And here's where the Savior cycle can spin out of control for a long, long time. The desire to be saved is not limited to romantic partnerships, although they are a hotbed for revealing how unrealistic expectations can set you up for disappointment. You might want to ask yourself if there is a savior prince or princess in your life whom you may be unconsciously asking and expecting to save you. Are you expecting them to make you feel safe, feel cherished, feel worthy? Take a really good look at any relationship dynamic that is in constant flux or has a lot of confrontation in it. Where could you be lacking self-responsibility and expecting someone to care for you in ways you are not willing to care for yourself?